You're listening to Criticaleye's Inspiring Leaders podcast. Criticaleye is a global membership community with over 2 decades of experience supporting senior executives in their roles. We work with board-level executives, giving them opportunities to build their knowledge, skills, and access independent reference points outside of their immediate networks. Whether you're stepping up into a more senior role or aspiring to do so, looking to hone high-level stakeholder relationships, drive operational performance, build your own personal resilience as a leader, or have longer-term career goals such as moving into a plural career, Criticaleye's approach supports a range of leadership challenges and ambitions.
A very warm welcome to this latest episode of Criticaleye's Inspiring Leaders podcast. I'm delighted to be your host for this episode. So I'm Alexander Hanna, Account Manager and Chief People Officer, CPO Lead at Criticaleye. I'm delighted to be joined by two guests with me, Heather Hayes, Global HR Director at Lightsource BP, and Francesca Ecsery, who's a portfolio non-executive director, including serving on the board of Air France currently, as also a board mentor at Criticaleye. This edition of the podcast is focused on the CPO, on the Chief People Officer in the main, and so as such we've titled it CPOs Cultivating Skills in the Senior Leadership Team. In this episode we'll explore how executives, more broadly, but in particular CPOs, can shape a high-performing senior leadership team by fostering the essential skills and capabilities needed to thrive. We'll focus on how leaders can prepare their teams to navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and drive long-term organisational success, highlighting the skills required for 2025 as we enter the new year, and the importance of aligning with the board's vision and overarching strategic goals. So as such, we have someone who's speaking as a current CPO practitioner, and then someone who's coming from a board perspective, and it would be great to bring out both sides. So without further ado, hey, Happy New Year to both of you, Heather and Francesca. And I'd like
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, thank you. Yeah, and I'd like to just start then, giving you the space to introduce yourselves, please, and then if you can expound upon some of the key skills and capabilities that you think leaders will need in particular in 2025. So if I could start with you, Heather, please.
Sure. Well, many thanks for inviting me to join your podcast. I'm Heather Hayes. I'm the Group HR Director for Lightsource BP. We're a renewable energy organisation. We've just been through an acquisition by BP, and I've been there about 5 to 6 years, but a lifelong people and culture practitioner.
Excellent, thank you. And Francesca?
So I'm a portfolio non-executive director, ranging from Air France to Hafner Energy, which is a decarbonisation solution company in France, and 2 boards in the UK, which is CT Automotive and Henderson High Income Trust.
Excellent, thank you both. Heather, if I can come back to you then, looking at the year ahead, what sort of skills, capabilities do you think will be most needed for leaders, particularly CPOs in the environment?
I think it's finding opportunities. I think we've been through a very tough 3 to 5 years. There's been a lot of focus on change management, a lot of resilience, but actually I think we're probably moving into a period where, for CPOs in particular, it's about that refresh, that looking for new opportunities. And there are some skills and qualities that I think CPOs will need. We need to sort of get away from being sort of more reactive, which is what the economic conditions and COVID and things have presented with us in the last sort of 3 to 5 years. And I think now we need to be looking to the future again to go, well, what are the frameworks that we need? How am I going to influence the board, the executive, to start to think about building for the next 3 to 5 years instead of reacting to the situations we're in. So I'm hoping that the skills that we need will be far more around planning, proactivity, diagnosing the strategic needs of a long-term sustainable workforce.
Excellent, thank you. Francesca, what do you think?
So I can speak mainly from a board perspective, and but basically with COVID, we got a taste of being of understanding that sometimes strategy doesn't actually help you in a crisis. We got a taste of being able to come up with very creative solutions without spending ages developing it and then ages implementing it, because you had to implement them very, very quickly. And sort of those skills and that kind of muscle memory is not gone. And I still see today that kind of reactivity and lack of planning, partly because the plan let us down. But if we had the ability to plan, AI, digital skills, supply chain, or not so much supply chain, diversification of supply chain, diversification of distribution, diversification of cash supply. These are getting very, very important, especially in a very polarized world where macroeconomics and geopolitics can have all sorts of influences. So you just need to make sure that you don't have all your eggs in one basket in any category. So some people who understand that and who are nimble enough and creative enough and resourceful enough to be able to find solutions for those particular need states are going to be sought after. Obviously, decarbonization is very, very important. But I would argue governance, corporate governance. When you're moving at 1 million miles an hour and you make decisions on imperfect information, having good corporate governance can help you move at speed and can help you sort of energize the decision-making process. So, somebody who understands a bit of that is very important. But basically, the answer is skills matrix is the answer, right? So you've got a strategy. What kind of skills you need to develop that strategy? And you sort of then have all those skills, and then you put names on the other axis and see who's got those. And if you've got a gap, you can develop it, you can train it, you can recruit for it, and you can have basically a plan to bridge the gap.
You both allude to the need for leaders to be agile,
Yes.
fundamentally, and I think that leads nicely into my next question, which is based on findings from our CPO research from 2024, strengthening leadership capabilities being identified as one of the biggest priorities, the top priority. So if I come back to you, Heather, what strategies can CPOs use to identify and address skill gaps within their leadership teams?
I think, very much to Francesca's point, I think it is about being quite structured in what does your organisation need. And sometimes I think we can pull out a playbook and we read what is, industry best practice for the skills that are needed for senior leadership. But I think that the skill for a CPO is to then diagnose which of those are applicable to your organisation. What is the need for your organisation? And I will always focus on it must be individualised to the organisational goals that you want to achieve. Then sort of make sure that when you build sort of a skills framework to go, what are the skills that we need? Who's got them? Very much to what you allude to, Francesca. That's the point that you get real value and you get the buy-in from senior leaders to go, it's challenging when you've been appointed to senior leadership roles, you kind of think you've got it. You think you've done a lot of your significant development, you've put huge hours and effort and taken feedback through your career to get to senior leadership. I think it can be quite difficult to then accept that actually here's a new ask, particularly if there is a change to maybe the skill sets that leaders used to get to where they got to. You've really got to build up some trust and they've got to understand why there may still be a gap and that it's just a new challenge, it's a new opportunity. And I think that's really difficult to do. So I think it's building the framework that is relevant to those senior leaders and the organisational goals. And then it's gaining the trust with those leaders that it's okay, that, there has been a change in the world, there's been a change in direction. And they just, we're here to help them with that next step. So that would be my perspective on it.
And Francesca, from a board and Remco chair as well perspective, do you agree with that? Other things you'd bring out?
Well, no, of course I agree with that. It's all very common sense. I always looked at the CPO role as kind of almost like the right-hand person of the CEO, because, you know, the CEO is managing stakeholders, la-di-da, but then to make whatever vision happen, you've got to have a very competent and very effective CPO who can then cascade all that down, because you can have sort of lofty objectives and purposes, and this is where the CPO and his or her team can actually sort of bring it to life, so that you can then set objectives. Obviously, I would say that remuneration works, you know. It's like money talks, but you have to make sure that you use it as a tool to incentivize the right behaviors, and you can use objective settings, you can use money, you can use non-financial incentives, status. You know, there's a plethora of tools that the CPO has and can offer up to the REM chair to use, but also to then cascade it all down to the rest of the organization. So yes, it's very important.
And my next question then being, building on that, speaking around culture as well and behaviours, and how from a board perspective, if you look at the role of the CPO as that right-hand person to the CEO on matters of culture, how can they influence that culture, those dynamics at the top table to get the best out of the team, collaborate, communication?
So I used to be a marketing person, so my answer will be tainted a little bit, but it's exactly the same as a marketing person would do to organize a marketing campaign. You do the same thing. You are trying to incentivize particular behaviors, and that's what marketing does, and that's what you need to do when you want to bring all the cultural element to life. You know, it's not a memo. You need to sort of translate it down, both in terms of what you say to people, but how you say it. And I'm going to use a very silly example, but in a retail network, which is where I was the marketing director, we were trying to make things happen, and very, very quickly, and to brief the network over 24 hours of making things happen. And the only leverage we had, this was in the 90s, was a memo. Well, you know what? You staple a chocolate to it, and suddenly people spend a bit more time reading it. You know, so you need to think about communication of strategic objectives and sort of cascading in a marketing fashion, marketing campaign. You need to invest in it. You can have a website, you can have you can have an app, you can have chats. You know, there's all sorts of tools that the CPO needs to understand how to use to bring these things alive, and to actually make sure that by the time you get to the bottom of the organization, there is complete recall of what the purpose of the organization is.
Thank you. And Heather, within Lightsource BP, how perhaps any examples or things you can share on how you helped influence that culture and dynamics at the top team to drive success?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've gone from being founder-led a year ago to being part of a big corporate, and that shift in leadership culture is significant. How do we maintain this sort of excellence in leadership and that team dynamic when, in a way, you know, a founder-led or most founder-led organisations tend to have a very strong direction at the top, and you do take on the persona a little bit in your whole leadership mindset of the behaviours of those few key founders. So we have really thought about how do we recreate what is really important to Lightsource BP culturally. So how do you not miss the founder influence and still maintain that culture that we believe is fundamental to Lightsource BP's success? So again, you know, I think it's using all the tools. First of all, be simple and be clear in what your expectations are. If that becomes complicated or woolly or overthought or overinterpreted, particularly in a global environment, it will not land more than one step away from you.
Yeah.
I think so. Don't overthink it. Keep it really simple. Be really clear, and we've aimed to do that. And we have looked not to change what doesn't need to be changed. If people have already got something and it's working well, then don't go messing with it. Just focus on the bit that you do want to impact, and then use all the tools that you've got to repeat that message. And it's rewarding the right, or clearly rewarding the right behaviours, deliverables. It's setting really clear objectives around it, and not sort of hiding the objective of leadership in other things. It's saying this is critical. If you don't point at it, people won't do it. Comms critical, and it's something. It's really interesting. I worked in the US for a number of years, and I really learnt the power of marketing to change culture. You expect the rest of the world to spend their money on it, and yet it's exactly the same principles. And I think the more that CPOs and people and culture functions can understand that marketing is not a trick you're not cheating. It's just a really fast way to create change. So, I have an excellent internal comms team who report to me. In fact, I look after marketing because it's such a powerful tool for us. And then, make sure that you're training, everything you do around training, that you when you say you want to do it, make sure people have got access to be able to change their skills. So make sure everything is lined up to keep repeating the simple and clear messages of expectation.
Thank you. And we're actually having this conversation today at our January Board Mentor Away Day, where we bring many of our board mentors together. And next month we have our Chief People Officer retreat at the end of February, and one of the sessions we're running there is entitled "The Evolving Relationship Between the CPO and the Board." So on that theme, we'll be speaking about those skills and capabilities that the leadership team must foster. How do you, Heather, make sure that those align with what the board, with the strategic priorities that the board's setting?
You have to be really brave. You have to go, and I think CPOs sometimes feel a bit nervous about treating themselves in the same way that other people on the executive may be treated by the board. And I think, go and ask those individuals on the board that you have, you build a relationship, build trust with them, and ask them. I mean, I have been incredibly lucky, particularly with REMCO chairs, but also the chair of boards, and they have spent time with me. And they've helped me interpret that piece around what they see as, the long-term strategy and how they're expecting that to be delivered. And they help me translate that into behaviours, leadership skills. And then they give me examples of other companies that they work with. How have other CPOs managed it? What's worked really well in other places? So I think that's, for me, the first point of contact is be brave and trust your board members to talk to you and help you work out what might be really effective for your organisation. And then I think it's also about being brave and challenging your exec, knowing that that's your role. The board are expecting you to be the one who feeds back, who sort of holds people's feet to the fire on it. Because whilst you can ask for their help, they do expect you to be the one who makes that happen. And they put a lot of trust and accountability on your shoulders. So again, I think you have to be able to I have to be able to go to the CEO and go, hey, I don't think that's working very well. I don't want to be going back to the chair going, could you please tell the CEO that blah, blah, blah. And that can be, particularly if you don't have the same length of time and relationship with, a new executive leadership team. That sometimes you have to really pull yourself together and go, you've got to go and say something. That's not right. And, you're not going to get penalised for it, and people need you to do it. So that's kind of how I look to do it. Build trust with both the board and the individual exec.
And from a board perspective, Francesca, how have you seen that alignment really work well, and how have you not seen it work well, and how do you see that importance of that relationship?
So where I've seen it work well is when the CPO is a seasoned, experienced senior person who is allowed but also has the right to sit at a number of sessions within the board. where I see it work well is when the CPO sits within the ExCom, so that that person can understand the other discussions that are happening on commercial issues, on tech issues, on whatever. Because, if there's a big tech project, somebody's going to have to set up a user acceptance testing, and a bunch of people will need to backfill for that. And, this is where the CPO comes in. So without upstream understanding of what's happening in the company, you kind of miss a huge amount of value that person can bring. So make sure that person has access to all the information, the key information, the reasons why, because often you sort of go down a solution-led argument when actually you need to do stepping back, saying, okay, what's the need state? Because it could be that we can come up with a different, better solution. This is back to the plurality of inputs before we sort of go down like a herd of buffaloes into one a particular track. You kind of need a diversity of input, and the CPO, I think, is a must. Now, as a REM chair, if you don't have a good CPO, it's a huge amount of work for you. I mean, really, it's just ridiculous amount of treacle treading, so it's an important role as far as certainly me as a REM chair are concerned, because there's it's not just about, a few bonus schemes. There's a lot of paperwork, there's shares involved, there's long-term, there's stakeholders involved, and somebody needs to help you deliver that. Because as a non-exec, you're non-executive, right? So you need somebody to execute all that. The relationship is key with the REMCO chair. Relationship is key, obviously, with the CEO. But with the chair and the senior independent director is also very important, because the SID is the one who evaluates the performance of the chair. And therefore, some sort of not dotted line, but sort of a forum where there is exchange with the CPO can also be very valuable, because it's put into context.
Thank you, Francesca. To perhaps take a more personal career journey angle, Heather, what advice would you give to someone aspiring to a CPO role, looking to make a meaningful impact in their organisation?
I think we so frequently rely on our technical experience to get us there, and I don't think that's always what actually, when somebody says, please join a CPO, please join the executive team, I think many times it's about your behaviours and your willingness to take accountability. And when I talk earlier about, be brave, challenge, and really be accountable, and I think, Francesca, to your point, I would see my role as being critical at REMCO. I'm not there to record, I'm not there to sort of take the minutes, I'm not there to go away and do the actions. I'm there to put forward a strategy aligned with both the CEO and the REMCO expectations. And I think you sort of need to have, and it's hard, I think we get to points in our career where we're recognised and awarded for delivering and clever solutions and things like that. But you have to get over things like that imposter syndrome. You have to say, I need to be here, I need to be accountable, and I need to consider myself equal to the other members of the executive. Even if I don't have all of their knowledge and experience, I have something to bring, and I have to be responsible for that. So I think for me it's a lot around behaviour that gives you the ability to then influence positively your organisation and people to trust you, that when you say, leadership needs to look this way, let's make these adjustments, that they have confidence that you have the knowledge, the experience to make those calls and to use up their time to direct their future careers. That the employees in your organisation put a lot of trust in you as well. So that would be my advice, is think about what goes beyond the classic HR, people and culture, technical skill set, and go, how do I lead?
Excellent. Francesca?
So every business have key levers. So I'm talking from a retail perspective. You've got the commissions, you've got marketing, how many customers you get onto the site or the retail shop, and then you've got the conversion, which is how well you convert these. And the best CPOs are those who have a good understanding of what those are. the key levers. And for that is sort of, as you are growing yourself into leadership position, make sure you get exposures, get involved in projects where these people who are who are leading the key levers, so that you're part of that. You get familiar with the vernacular, you get familiar with the priorities, you get, so you've got a really broad understanding, because by the time you get at XCOM, that is, you're supposed to be able to do other people's jobs on that table should one of them get hit by a bus. So, it's important that you get a plurality of experience, not just HR. And if you can't develop that in your career path, then sort of be part of projects. A big IT projects would be a good one, or a big sort of big campaign with marketing, or a big sort of renegotiation strategy with suppliers, or something like that, so that you can have a deeper understanding of what the key levers of your organizations are.
And finally then, building on that again, across Criticaleye's research and the reports that we do regularly, we know that executives that we work with and CPOs need a greater need for external reference points to better understand the broader landscape. For yourself, Heather, what role has having external reference points and just being able to look externally, how's that been helpful for you and performance in the organisation?
I think speed, really. Having external reference points just stops you overthinking where you were. Because if you're looking, if you're not getting those fresh ideas, you're not introducing new ideas into your thinking and therefore your organisation. But you're also not sort of taking shortcuts. And I'll give you an example. So funnily enough, I was really reflected on that last point you made, Francesca, where you said you have to have a breadth of experience. So I actually joined my children's school board, and all of a sudden, because I really had to know what I was doing there, the internal governance of Lightsource BP suddenly made sense to me within days. Whereas to it, and you hear it all the time, you sort of go, I'll go and ask the GC about it, or company secretary will tell me if I need to know. And I think there are shortcuts that external reference gives you that accelerates your knowledge and therefore what you can do in your organisation. And I've sort of found that, one of the things that Criticaleye also does for me is I have an incredible mentor who has, worked in a much broader field, much more senior level actually in bigger organisations, and just that shortcut to go, well, you don't have to make every mistake yourself. They'll sort of, my mentor will say, hey, do you know there's a different way of looking at that? And this works somewhere else. And it's just the speed that I can then turn around and rethink and go back to my organisation with probably a better solution. So for me, that external referencing just gives you real depth and understanding and speed.
Absolutely. And Francesca, as a Criticaleye board mentor yourself, what role do you see having those external reference points and the support you can provide personally to a leader?
Well, as a leader, you're in your organization, you're supposed to have all the answers, which of course is not possible. And so working with a mentor, it's a safe space for you to be able to test some ideas or tests, or sort of make sure that you don't overthink it, but equally that you have some perspective, or that you don't overanalyze something, that you can just move forward and sort of plan in a more efficient and effective ways. But without that safe external sounding board, it will take you much longer. I'm sure eventually you'll get there, but it is beneficial for the organization, but mainly for the mentee. And for me, I find it a real privilege to be able to add value. It really does feel good, because you didn't realize you could add value, but suddenly you quite as well, yeah.
Francesca and Heather, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation this morning. And you'll be joining us for the rest of the Board Mentor Away Day, so look forward to catching up with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invite.
thank you for everyone who listened to our podcast, and please do check out more Criticaleye does and our other podcast episodes as well through our website. It's been a pleasure to host you, and have a very good day.